I'm here with Grace. Grace has been our city director here in Jakarta for the last year. And so Grace, I just want to take this time out for people to get to know who you are and a little bit about your history as well too. For you, where did you grow up? Where's home for you?
That is a confusing answer for me. So I was born in Indonesia, but when I was 6 months old, my parents brought me to the States. And so I lived in West Virginia, North Carolina, and New York, all for the first 12 years of my life. And then I moved to Indonesia when I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
Stayed in Indonesia until I was 18 years old, and then went to Michigan for university.
Okay.
Graduated and then came back, got married 2 years later, and I've been in Indonesia ever since.
Yeah. So now Michigan, why Michigan? Because was your first choice, or what universities were you hoping to go?
I mean, honestly, I wanted to go to California for university.
Yeah.
But my parents, they wanted me to be either in the Midwest.
Got it.
Or in New York area, because they just wanted to make sure I focused on my studies. And so they didn't want me to go to any party school. So they chose University of Michigan for me, actually. And I got in, and so they're like, okay, that's where you're going. So,
yeah. What was your major in at school?
I was a pre-med student.
Okay. Hey, I was that. Okay, I was a WashU pre-med student.
Pre-med too.
Yes.
And so my major was biology and anthropology.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
double
Okay.
majored. Yeah.
My was chemistry.
Oh,
Love chemistry. Hated biology. Love chemistry.
Yeah. Well, I only realized that science wasn't for me, but it was already too late. So.
Got it. So once you decide, hey, pre-med probably isn't for me, what did you end up graduating with?
No, actually, I continued it because I think in my family, our culture is when you start something, you finish it no matter what. And so I finished pre-med.
Yeah.
And I was thinking maybe I should have worked a little bit harder. So I worked at a hospital for 3 years.
Okay.
To see if healthcare was for me, but then eventually after those 3 years, I realized it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And so I took a short break, and during that short break, my high school teacher was asking me to come and help some students in our high school.
Okay.
To just help them with college applications and things like that. And so slowly I realized that my heart was actually for the education sector.
Okay.
And so slowly I transitioned into being a career counselor.
Yeah.
And I told her I would only help her for a year, but then I ended up being there for 6-7 years.
Yeah.
So I fell in love with education.
Now, you and I have gotten to know each other for a year, and not only this time, you've actually become one of our best team members, but actually one of my closest friends. And when we first approached you about Resource Global, what did you think the job was, and what do you think of it now? What's your interpretation of the job now?
When I first heard about Resource Global, I wasn't too sure what it was. And I wasn't even too sure I just didn't have a clear picture of what it was. But what I knew was this was about empowering the next leaders for Indonesia. And this is about investing in the lives of young adults in Indonesia. And so that is something that I would love to be a part of, because my heart and my passion is about creating communities of young adults and growing together in every way possible, whether that's leadership or figuring in each stage of life where God is calling me.
Yeah.
And so, I have a big heart for creating communities.
Got it.
And so that's why I said yes to Resource Global.
Yes.
What it is now, so what got me hooked into Resource Global was Sarah Chow, so the previous city facilitator for Indonesia. So she told me, she knows that my heart is for creating small groups or life groups. So she told me, what you're doing is basically getting paid to create more and more life groups for young adults.
Yes.
And I was just like, yeah, I can do that. And so, but now I can see how Resource Global is really impacting the lives of young adults and really making young adults more aware of to see their gifts not as something that they use for themselves, but something that God wants to use for their city. So I just love the mission and the vision of Resource Global.
And honestly, Grace, I realize a lot of times is each person has a passion, each person has different strengths. We gotta help them process through what those strengths and passions are. And sometimes it just takes over time to encourage them. How does the gospel fit through all those different things, and continue to provide that encouragement through all that time?
Yeah. I mean, I think in being a counselor, I think that was God's way of training me, but it is very important to understand your weaknesses and your strengths.
Yeah.
But the thing is not to focus too much on your weaknesses, but focus a little bit more on your strengths and knowing that God has created me for this.
Yes.
But then these gifts are not just for me, but for the community. And so I think that was one aspect that I was missing in during career counseling, but now that's something that I've renewed in my mindset when it came to Resource Global.
And honestly, Grace, I want people to be realistic about their weaknesses. Look,
Yeah.
there are times God has not given us certain strengths. Totally understand that. Totally understand that.
Yeah.
But let's be realistic a lot of times and just be embracing of who He is made you as well too.
Yeah. And I actually, so there was a session when you shared about Judges 6.
Yeah.
About Gideon, and I really liked how one point in that chapter where it said, where you were telling us actually that God never disagrees with the weaknesses that Gideon has.
Yeah.
And in the same way, like He doesn't disagree that maybe we're not the smartest or the most eloquent, but what matters is that He's with us, He's called us, and He's with us.
Yep.
And so are we willing to meet the call?
Yeah. For some of those guys who are, many from the U.S. who are listening to this or whatever it is, what happens on the day-to-day? What is your job as a city director here in Jakarta? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, number one, I talk to a lot of people to get to know their stories, to get to know, what are their passions, what kind of spheres of influence are they called to be in. I also look through the curriculum for Resource Global to make sure that the curriculum is related to what the cohorts need and is also city related. Along with that, this is what I do for Resource Global, right?
Yep.
I think along with that, I just connect with different teachers and even with the board members to see, how we can make this curriculum better and better each year, and how we can fit it according to the type of cohort members that are in our cohort this year.
Yeah.
And so,
good.
That's about what I do.
Share a little bit about yourself. Married, 2 kids. What else?
Yes, I got married 7 years ago. I have 2 kids. My oldest is about 6 years old. Her name is Maddie. And my younger one is Aaron. He is 4 years old. They are the joy of my life. I lead 3 community groups. So I lead 1 women's life group, 1 mommy's group, and then one young adults life group. And so quite busy. I love working out.
Yes.
I love doing Muay Thai. I love going wall climbing. I'm a very active person.
And
on top of that, what else? I love bubble tea and coffee. Is that important? I don't know.
That's very important. If people had to ask you, what are your strengths? What are your passions that you have? What are the things that, if people know about Grace, these are the things I'm really good at?
I think one strength that I've realized I'm good at is just connecting with people and getting people to kind of share their story with me. I like to talk a lot, but I think one of my strengths is actually being a good listener. And so in that way, I'm able to kind of create an environment to make people feel comfortable enough to share their stories. And I actually relate to people a lot when it comes to their weaknesses. Because I feel like your weaknesses, it's good to know, but you shouldn't marinate in those weaknesses and feel pity for yourself.
Why is that so important to you, really being able to understand their weaknesses? Why do you find that you're able to connect with people on that?
I think being vulnerable, being able to admit your weaknesses, it means that you're being vulnerable to that other person. And for me, being vulnerable is always a way of God starting healing in your life or God starting to do something big in your life. And so I think when you start sharing your weaknesses and offering those weaknesses to God and telling Him, I know that this is my limitations. I know that when you bring it to God, then He can use your weakness and make that into your greatest asset. And so I don't know, maybe that's why.
Good. Grace, thank you very much for taking some time to talk.
Thank you so much, Tommy. Enjoying being here.
All right.